Yeah, Steve, your chance.
So which one are we doing first?
Can you move forward 2 or 3 slides out? Sorry, apologies, it seems to have just frozen here at our end. So if we can just move forward to the heading on incorporate heritage rate into general rate. It's a couple of slides on.
Heritage rate.
Into the next one.
Heritage, okay.
There we are.
So we'll do heritage first. There were 3 questions here. The first one was, what exactly does it relate to this proposal? Because there are slightly confusingly 3 types of heritage tax charged, as you can see there. The 2 of them are reasonably straightforward. The Arts Centre and the Cathedral relate to money that's already been advanced, and it's intended to fund that money over a period of time, so limited there per the slide. This proposal, though, is around the slightly broader heritage tax, which relates to 4 specific buildings. The idea originally is that we would advance the money and borrow it, and then use this particular targeted rate to repay the borrowing over 30 years. So that's what it relates to. The reason you may recall it's getting a bit awkward is that a lot of this money hasn't actually been advanced yet, so we haven't actually borrowed the money yet. So it's not providing the sort of transparency that it was originally intended to do. The second question is...
Sorry, could you just speak a little bit louder, please? Or point the microphone at you.
Sorry, I'll lean in a little bit. Is that better?
I'm used to Mary yelling at me all day.
Shall I repeat that, or are you okay with what I've...
Yeah, far away. Carry on.
So the second question, what do the rates get applied for? And I think I've just covered that. We at the moment, they're just part of our general funds because we haven't actually spent this money yet, so we haven't borrowed the money to do the spending. So the original purpose is a little redundant. The third question, if they were incorporated into the general rate, does that, I guess, put the projects at more risk? Would it be easier to say, no, we're no longer going to do this? And I think the answer to that is yes. The purpose of a targeted rate is to collect an amount of money that effectively commits you to spending that money on that project. Having said that, they haven't yet been started, so they're either in the budget or they're not. The presence of a targeted rate provides discipline, but it also provides a degree of risk that if you decide not to do it, it becomes difficult then whether we need to refund some of the targeted rates that have been collected in the past.
All right, questions, Kelly?
So currently, is the heritage rate a line item that people see in their rates?
Yes, it is.
It is, yeah.
Yep.
So I'd support keeping that.
Yeah.
People like to know what they're paying for.
They do.
That's exactly what I think too. So, so that
Oh, is that the next slide? Yeah, okay.
That's working.
Okay.
No, Jake, they're paying the heritage rate for heritage things.
No,
Sorry, Kelly, did you? I was talking. Yeah, all good. Sarah, please.
Yeah, so just to clarify, so what I took from what you said is that the concern the other day was valid, and that because we consulted on specifically what that rate would be for,
Yeah.
if we now changed it without changed what it could be used for without consulting, if you like, that might be risky? Or
no,
just that...
No, because it hasn't collected that much money yet. Really, the purpose of the targeted rate is to provide you with discipline to say, well, we will collect this in order to do this project. If you got rid of this rate, it would be easier then to change your budget and no longer do the projects.
Okay, but if we got rid of the rate, and that we... So normally we'd have to... Normally we would specifically ask a question on changing a rate and the rate's purpose, and we didn't do that. It was just kind of one of the things that was sort of in the mix of stuff. So when we first put this heritage rate on, we specifically consulted saying, should we charge a heritage rate to be used for these projects? So wouldn't we have to specifically engage with people to change the purpose of that rate?
Not really, because the projects haven't happened yet. So the borrowing hasn't yet been incurred, so the purpose of the rate to repay the borrowing is just a little redundant.
Yeah, but if we weren't going to use them for that purpose, would we have to refund? You mentioned briefly we might have to refund some of those rates.
Only if it's a long period of time and the amount of money collected is more than the amount eventually spent. I mean, the
Okay.
amount collected to date isn't very much, and
Yeah,
the
and it's
cathedral,
likely to be
not the
spent.
cathedral, the museum project of the funding is going ahead, so there won't be a problem
But
ending it now.
if we had collected that money for those specific projects and we chose to spend it on something completely different, that might be an issue.
In theory, yes,
Yeah.
but again, it depends on the amount. At the moment, because the museum project is going ahead, that won't be a problem if you ended it
Okay.
now.
Pauline?
Just going back to the targeted rate, I think is agreed, it's more visible to the ratepayer
That's the purpose, yeah.
that they are being charged a targeted rate for heritage. Is that also important to the Auditor General? Or the audit, New Zealand?
No, actually, it's entirely up to you what you choose to make visible and what you don't. Targeted rates, I guess there's two purposes for targeted rates. You could make it geographical, so it's only a certain area that pays this tax because
Like in
that affects
Aparoa
them.
with the health.
Or if you make it, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Or if you make it generic, then it's really just for transparency reasons.
All right, so there's no issue there.
But there's no audit problem. No,
Right,
you can do what
but you agree that it is more visible for people to see.
Well, that's the purpose. Yeah, that's
The
right.
purpose. Thank you.
Okay.
Oh,
Everybody-
sorry, just picking up on your previous, what you said there was interesting. You said that the targeted rate its purpose is to be more clear with the community. Do you think that in this instance it is?
I don't think many people would understand the nature of this one because, like I say, it was originally intended to. We would incur borrowing for this, and then the targeted rate would be to repay the borrowing over time.
So
but given that it's several buildings, it's not quite like the cathedral one. I don't think most people would understand which buildings are.
So we've put a mechanism on ourselves that is less clear to the ratepayer, but also gives us less flexibility in terms of how we spend their dollars. Is that fair to say?
That's probably fair, yeah.
Thank you.
Kelly? And then Mark. Kelly, then Mark.
Just following up on Jake's question, do we produce with our, with these line items, targeted rate for heritage, etc., a glossary of what things are for? And could we further split up like sports and recreation paying for pools and parks and things like that? Do we do that?
Yeah, we do. The first rates invoice that people get, whether it's email or through the post, has got an explanation, a little leaflet every year that explains how the rate system works, and it's got a brief description of each individual line item on their invoice.
But so when you get the actual bill, it's in a separate sheet. It's not sort of behind it, if you like, page 2.
Yeah, it's a separate glossy that's included in the envelope or the email.
You can tell I've never read it.
Mark, please.
Thank you. Just looking at the last two on there, the Arts Centre and the Cathedral, given the large amount of response to consultation we had regarding the Arts Centre, and that Arts Centre rate, I gather, is still continuing because we've advanced on that. Is it likely to be confusing to ratepayers that we've got the Arts Centre rate continuing, and yet we're not effectively funding the Arts Centre?
You'll probably know that better than me because you'll talk to them more, but yes, I would have thought it would be because
So,
it's two separate things.
I guess to extrapolate on that a little bit further then for, I guess, a thought, would this Arts Centre rate be one that we could potentially use to expand to be able to effectively fund the rates for the Arts Centre more directly? Just a thought.
No, I think just if I can cover, you'd probably need to reconsult around that and so on, because you had the rate for a particular purpose and now you're changing that purpose. So I think you need to go and talk to the community about that. So because that rate was really there to fund that amount. Yes, capital. And so, but I take your point, Councillor, that in actual fact people will go, you've got a rate, we're paying it, why is it that there's no money going? Because the money has already been advanced as capital. We would just like, and I think Russell would like to talk to it a bit more, And we just want to make sure there's real visibility over the sort of the long-term impacts that the length, if you keep it in, you're absolutely right, councillors, it gives visibility, and that visibility is, it's opaque if it goes into the general rate. It is there as a line item, and so there's that. It has a modest impact, it has an impact of 0.29% if it's kept as a separate rate. But also, I think, Russell, you wanted to just talk a bit about the long-term impact of that rate.
Yes, thanks very much, Bede, if I could. So yeah, the rate is, as Steve has outlined, it's for 4 buildings. One of them is the provincial chambers, of which $53.5 million has been set aside for that for some time in the future. Now, it's fair to say that number probably won't be that when we get to actually do that work.
So
So
Russell,
the intent of this
Russell, just before, so looking at it, it ceases in 2051.
Correct,
So we only started it a couple of years ago.
correct.
So we've only collected bugger all by now.
It's small amount, Steve said, yeah.
About 4.5 million so far.
Yeah. Okay. Right.
And so work on the museum is advancing. So yes, so it's for 4 buildings. So it says Heritage Trust, Heritage Rate, but it's
Yes.
for 4 buildings.
Yes.
So it doesn't actually cover all heritage costs. So there's, I guess we're not being openly transparent in that.
And one of which is practically finished. Municipal.
Yes,
Okay, right, yeah, for sure.
complete.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Municipal.
So the rationale for, or part of the rationale for proposing incorporating it into the general rate was rather than be rating for things ahead of time, actually rate for the items when we do them. So that would effectively, so that took 0.29% out of the rates for the current year and adjustments in future years. So the thinking was just like any other capital project. We put it in the budget as a capital amount, and we will budget to borrow for that and then repay the loan. So that was the proposal to do that. One, to make it more clarity around what the, I guess take away that ambiguity of opaqueness, as Bede was saying, but also just make it more absolute. When we did do the work, that's what's going to be funded at that time, rather than rating people now for something that may or what we're proposing to do in the future.
So just one question from me. If municipal chambers is missing, everyone out there is already paying this rate. It's already they've been used to it for the last 2.5 years. Is that correct?
That's correct. It's based on the capital value. So whenever the rate started, they've been paid
cool,
for. Yep.
Cool. So if municipal chambers is missing, we could slide in the word Dux Deluxe in there, could we?
As Bede sort of outlined before, Mr. Mayor, when you set up a rate, you set up a purpose for the rate.
Okay.
If you're going to change the purpose, then you need to consult on what
fair
that
enough.
purpose
Fair
is.
enough.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So we got Yanni, then Tyler, then Sarah, then Pauline.
Sorry, Steve.
I did think when we set up the heritage rate, it was kind of open to other heritage. Have we looked at specifically what we consulted on and what it could be used for?
So all we've consulted on is merging the heritage rate into the general rate. We haven't looked at changing the purpose or anything. All we've looked on is...
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Yep.
Just to be more specific, but the mayor's idea, because I originally wanted this for the ducks or for Ferrymead or for other heritage things initially, but just when we set it up, if we kept it, are we sure that it's limited to just those projects that are identified? Or was it open enough that we could apply it to other?
I'll need to check to be sure, but I believe, Russell's going to do it now, that the current planning documents specifically state these 4 buildings.
The annual plan, which ends on 30 June 2024, this one actually specifies the 4 buildings for which it collects it, which is the municipal chambers,
those 4.
provincial, those 4. So it specifies that, so you'd need to go back if you wanted to broaden it.
Okay.
Really confusing for people to be still paying rates on this one. Finished.
Right. This rate use paid. Okay. Sorry.
Yeah, specifically says it.
Who was it? Yanni did a thing. Tyler, please. Sorry.
Kia ora, guys.
Yeah, I got it.
2 quick questions. The first one,
I'm sort of not understanding the rates impact and why there is an impact if we incorporate it into the general rate. Can you just, in short, just tell me how that is impacting on rates if we incorporate it into the general?
Yeah, for sure. So what the rate is doing, as others have said, it's going ahead saying, okay, this is the amount of money we want to raise for these events which are occurring in the future. What we're saying is, rather than do that, so people are paying now, some of that expenditure hasn't started. So we're, I guess, waiting for something yet to happen. If we rated for the items when they do happen, like most, well, just about every other capital project, we would incur those costs at the time. So therefore, because those costs haven't been incurred now, we don't need to collect that money. So that gives a reduction in the general rate of overall rates of 0.09%. Yep.
Like, would you say there's a slight intergenerational impact on this based on who pays now and who pays in the future when it comes up?
Yes, you could, through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, you could say that. If you're looking at intergenerational equity issues, you're saying, okay, so the people using the facility should be the ones paying for it. So yeah, so people are paying in advance. Yeah.
Sarah.
Can I just try and clarify that whole the assertion that we're rated for things that haven't happened yet, when actually 3 of those 4 projects are currently incurring costs that we are going to be paying for now. So we're kind of, like, so the museum redevelopment, we are booked in to pay. The Robert McDougall Art Gallery is currently underway. Our City o Tahi just about complete. So we've pitched in $10 million for that. So the funds that we've already collected are being used currently, aren't they? Being paid out. It's just that one building, which there is a plan for a section of it, that we haven't yet firmed up something for.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that is correct.
Yeah.
Some of those buildings, some of those projects, we are incurring costs now.
Yeah. And
Overall, we're not incurring the cost to the extent of the rate that we're collecting today. We will over time.
But within the next couple of years, we're likely to have.
You can't be right, Russell, because in theory, we've collected, say, I think you guys said $1.5 million since this started. We've already thrown, it was actually 10 plus 2 at OMC.
At OCC.
So we're in overdraft already.
We're already in overdraft, so I'd rather just keep
so
it
I just
the way it is.
Keep the way it is, or roll it. It doesn't worry me if it's rolled
Spreads
together.
it over a much longer period of time.
Absolutely, and people are used to paying it at the moment, so just leave it in there. And if it goes into the general rate, that's cool, and just put it to one side and say we are spending money on it, because we had $2 million set aside for provincial, and we flogged that to finish off municipal.
Provincial is 53. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
It's going to confuse the living daylights out here.
So the question is, we were looking to incorporate it into the general rate. If the feeling of council is that, okay, that's going to take away the an element of transparency, then that's fine. We'll keep it like it is, understanding that those costs that we've already incurred will still be being paid for. We will still be rating for it. We're not removing it. We were just looking to accommodate it within the general rate. But if you want to keep it as a separate rate, that's fine as well.
I think people are saying that.
I would rather accommodate it.
You would?
Yeah, I would.
Thank you.
So I'd rather keep it targeted and visible.
Okay.
Well,
So the point is that if you put it into the general, it's going to add 0.2.
No, but we're collecting it. Instead of having 4 lines on your rate bill, you'll have 1 line on your rate bill, but the total will still be the same.
Correct. And we trust everyone that it's going to stay. We're not going to flog it off and send it somewhere else or whatever. It'll
But it's going to have a 0.29%.
Your worship, so if you keep the heritage rate, it's 0.29% increase overall, and the reason for that is that we're collecting as a prepayment, if you like, against future expenses, and that's why it adds to it. If it goes into the general rate, then as the expenditure is incurred or the borrowings for the expenditure, then you go and you rate on that basis. So it might be 3 years that you end up spending the money. That is when you rate for it. So there is a minor effect of this here, if you go and if you
Can I-
keep it separate.
That sounds like it would mean that we don't actually have a targeted rate. We're just borrowing and paying it back, as opposed to
Correct.
rating.
And that's how council does most projects. As a project arises, you borrow the money and then you collect it. Now, this one here, if it's for those 4 projects, then if it's through the general rate, when the money is borrowed, that's when you then go and repay it.
So that
Sounds
has,
quite
You still
sensible.
collect it and you just repay it.
No.
yeah, but they got the impact.
We're not spending the money. The issue is like we're collecting money that we're not spending. Normally, when we did a project under the general stuff, we only rate for what we're spending.
We've already spent the money.
spent-
We're
we've
well in
spent-
overdraft already.
Can we, yeah,
For the
wanna have 5
heritage
minutes?
one,
yeah, just to
We'll have 5 minutes and just clarify our thinking. Thank you. We are collecting.